yesterday we went over that first passage with the physician and fear. The second passage I went over with fifth period and seventh period. So if after you got your Scantron back, you realize the second passage was one that was giving you more issues, or just while doing it you're having problems with it, if you go to the class calendar, and again web address is on your weekly syllabi, that tiny URL. The YouTube notes for yesterday is broken down to a passage 1, passage 2. So far as review, feedback, discussing it, second passage is available. Not that you necessarily need to watch the whole thing, but if there were any questions that you were having issues with, you'd be able to go back, find them in there, locate them. So that might be something that's worthwhile. With the multiple choice, I certainly said don't read too much into it, and I would hold by it at this point. One thing that I would try to start to maybe recognize, and hole punch the Scantron so that you get them back, keep them with the test. Are there types of questions that you tend to have problems with? Is it the passage as a whole? Does it those antecedent questions? Where we had like the pronoun they that we were looking at. Are there type of tone questions? As we do more and more of them, if you're able to pick up on type of patterns to questions that you do either really well with, or you have some problems with, or struggles, that can be very helpful moving forward. So certainly hold on to those. Look over the questions. Might not always be fun to go over them in your mind as if the score wasn't what you were hoping, but it can be just as valuable as taking it and practicing it in the first place. So we're going to hold now. Still, you like the before.
He talks a lot about death.
Do you notice it more because, do you think you noticed it more because we were talking about it after the first part, or do you think he was talking about it or bringing it up more? Okay.
The funny part was whenever that one was not sure about that one guy, and it kind of came all over if it was her, so
I couldn't hear a word you said. I heard the guy, and then after that I lost it.
So whenever he was talking about that one person, who like we were eating stuff off the window.
Oh, James Castle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was talking, and I just like turned back and he was talking about how he was throwing up on the window.
Mm-hmm.
And like how that guy was like, I guess it's the beating these guys, and then hold on, like you're beating people.
Okay, yeah, and I would say Salinger strengthens that parallel by the fact that Castle's wearing his sweater, on the time that he jumps out. So it's not that it would be, he sees himself necessarily jumping out, but there's certainly still a little bit of connection. So Shelby, your idea was just simply mentions death or talks about death
Not
more.
Not always about like just suicidal, but like what Michelle said, like about other people as well.
So all right, mentions. So mentions death a fair amount. That could be suicide, or that could be other folks like James Castle. Certainly, still talking to Allie quite a bit. Still mentioning, him in the cemetery and things like that. He has more episodes where he pretends that he's, bleeding, speaking in phone booth and whatnot. So certainly still some troubles that would be taking place. What else about Holden in general? Don't have to. We'll come back to things. Right now, I just want to throw up ideas that people are noticing, recognizing. Whether it be, I know Nicole said I like him. Is he somebody that just needs a hug? Is he somebody that you think you understand maybe why he's going through issues, or are there not issues, but certain experiences, or even things independent of Holden? Met Phoebe and a lot of other folks kind of get involved.
The one part in the book when he was with Phoebe, I noticed that when he thought, there's this one moment I noticed when he thought something, he said exactly what he thought to her.
Okay. So would you say he's more honest with Phoebe?
Yeah.
Okay. So honest. Phoebe's a character that people usually like. I think the kids we like in general. And we'll probably look at it later on in the year after we've read more books, but the American Library Association, they love making lists of things like, top censored books, top books. They also have the top, I think it's 100 characters from like 1900 to 2000. Holden's number 2. Phoebe makes the list. I think she's in the 40s, which kind of surprises people just because she's not a dominant character throughout the book. And it's, reader polls and variety of things. Kurtz is on the list, even though Kurtz is in a book for like 12 pages and whatnot. But the fact that she makes the list does kind of surprise people from time to time. Olivia, yeah?
I was going to say, he seems like he feels that he
Yeah, I would agree with that. Come on, there you go. Any specific people or groups of people come to mind with that?
It seems like when he sees like people who he thinks are like phony or like sad, he just kind of feels bad for them, but he also kind of feels like he has to feel some sort of remorse for them.
Okay.
He feels like compelled to feel a certain way, even though it's not really affecting him at all.
We're gonna do like a 6-second delay, apparently. Nice little shepherd's hook I drew. That's really now. Who else?
He's very self-destructive, but whenever it comes to putting like Phoebe in a position that might be compromising, he doesn't want to do it. In particular, talking about the scene where he's like, "I'm gonna go out west and move," and he shuts the entire idea down.
Mm-hmm. So like he has that moment where he realizes, like he actually makes an adult decision of all people.
Yeah.
Holden's able to figure out and recognizes that's not a good idea. So self-destructive behavior, but even at some point. Okay. Ooh, it's showing up. And then we would have like exception. Won't take Phoebe with him when he thinks about going out west, live in the woods, be a deaf mute, marry a deaf mute. We have very good conversations.
Still not like talk, but they can still
Yeah, no, there's still certainly communication. One of the things, I mean, because he mentions to Sally, you know, when he's yelling and screaming at her apparently in the restaurant, the whole idea about running up to Massachusetts and Vermont and just going, no, this is not going to be an idea. Then he does talk about this idea about living in the woods, pretending that he can't, you know, talk to anyone here, and he would marry, you know, a deaf mute. That's certainly communication. In general, seems to be a problem of his, whether it's inability to communicate to some. Certainly with others, he can communicate. With Phoebe, he's pretty free, I would say, with his communication. Allie, you know, he certainly talks to him openly. But when it comes to other folks, has a hard time with it. And really, you know, even you go all the way back to Allie's death, what's his reaction? His physical reaction to Allie's death causes him to punch out all the windows. So, and not saying that you can't express any kind of anger or emotions physically or whatnot, but that kind of seems to be his outlet in that manner. And so that inability to communicate could be part of the reason. I don't want to say it would be the only thing, but that could be part of the reason that he certainly would be having difficulty, not necessarily existing, but finding a way to exist within the world that he's in. So, inability to communicate could be problematic. All right. Other things? Just noticing.
Like the whole book, but especially towards the end, whenever he's talking to his sister about how he's like not going to school, and she's like, you don't learn anything, like he's like really lost as to like what actually interests him. That's why like he never stays in any schools because he doesn't like it anymore.
Well, and she even calls him out because I can't think of it. What's one thing you like? And he comes back with the response, Allie, and well, that doesn't count. So I mean, even the 10-year-old is calling him out on it, and that could be a whole separate argument. Does that count? Does that not? And then it's in that same scene when you actually get the title of the book popping up. What's the whole story behind this Catcher in the Rye thing? Which he butchers, because he doesn't even understand the poem correctly. But you have Phoebe, calls him out. About what he likes. Daddy's going to kill you. If you're not able to get this right, and she's putting the pillow over her head and all that kind of stuff because she's upset. And then she tells Mom she was smoking cigarettes. Doesn't seem to bother Mom too much. That's a whole generational thing, 1950s. But then, in that same place, now that's when we get the whole idea of the catcher in the rye. Which, that doesn't even look like rye. My handwriting has deteriorated today. I didn't know if we would maybe bring this up since we did. I'm passing this out. Don't fear anything. It's the poem. Robert Burns. Robert Burns is like the national hero of Scotland. Statues of him all over the place. And authors like his poems because they use them to come up with titles of books. Steinbeck did the same thing with The Mice and Men. And we're not going to get a whole, analysis of poem and all that kind of stuff. It's a pretty lewd poem. Very sexual in nature, imagery, all of that kind of stuff. This is, and he mentions earlier on about it being a children's song. It is turned into nursery rhymes, and it's pop songs like in the 1940s, 1950s, and they changed some things around with words and all that kind of stuff. But he takes a very, adult poem. Basically, it's two people meeting in the field so that they can have sex. They're getting away from families and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, like that poem, I want to be the catcher in the rye. No, it's when a body meet a body, not a body catch a body. So even his whole, I won't say the concept of it, because what does he really want to do? I mean, when he says, I want to be the catcher in the rye. Woo! No, I will save you. What is he visualizing? Maybe he's the guy who has the big safety net, or Matt's trucking along and he's gonna grab him by the ankle so he doesn't make the leap. Who knows? What does he really want to preserve? I think life's too general of one. Yeah, I'd say youth, innocence. So from that metaphorical standpoint, you can get a cliff body with all these people running. It's not that they're going to jump to their death when they go off the cliff for kids, but what's going to happen? They're going to leap into, and this might even be scarier, when you're kind of on that precipice of that cliff. You guys are there to jump. Ben, did you say? Yeah, like adulthood. So in his way, he thinks he'll be the person who will preserve them so they don't get into that ugly world of adulthood. Anybody ever see the movie Billy Madison with Adam Sandler? If you've had Language of Richmond with Mr. Kerr, you feel like you've watched the movie, even if you hadn't. If you haven't seen it, adult goes back to school to graduate for a whole bunch of stupid reasons, but he has to start in kindergarten and works his way up. I think it's when he's in 5th grade. He's in the cafeteria. Stay here as long as you can. Do not grow up. You don't want to go into that real world. And that's kind of what Holden ends up kind of being, that type of character, where he wants to preserve, we could say, youth, innocence. Mentioned the idea about Salinger and Holden maybe having like a Peter Pan complex, stay young forever, but keep children from adulthood, because what's going to happen as you get to be an adult, you're probably going to end up being a phony, and can't have that. So when you turn 18, Lexi, you're making that leap into the world of phonies.
So you're a phony?
Been there for 18 years. What else? So again, general.
I guess like kind of the whole like passion and ride thing, it definitely like seems like the people he's like most genuine, like honest with is like little kids. Like he still talks to Allie and like
Mhm.
Phoebe is obviously like the big person that he's like honest with. But like the girl he meets in the park that he like pretends to skate, like he's actually like it's the first time where he's like actually like being very like open with the person. Like, the
That he doesn't like already know, or yeah.
Like, it's kind of like that. Like he doesn't think kids are like photos.
And even the conversation that he has with the boys in the museum, you know, he's trying to talk to them, have an actual conversation. He gets very upset, you know, when he sees the words in the hallway at school, you know, with the bathroom and things like that. So certainly he does seem to be probably most comfortable. And I don't know if honest, genuine, you could probably throw in, you know, a bunch of those different kinds of words. Maybe we'll just mention them all. Comfortable, honest, genuine, with children. So yeah, whether it be the girl in the park, the kids in the museum, Allie, Phoebe, that seems to be when he is most at home. And then you could certainly also do the flip of that. When is he most uncomfortable? Anytime he is with adult, whether it be the scene with Mr. Antolini or any of the other adults that he ends up being by.
I was gonna ask about what happened with this character. Like,
He says like
Yeah.
stuff like this is happening. He's a little bit
just like thought this
that's
was
weird.
That was weird.
Yeah.
It is weird.
Then he felt bad about it.
One of the, when I say problem with Holden, not like problem with him as a person, one of the problems with, the main problem that I have with Holden as being the narrator is you don't know what is true and what's not. And you know, him going, I'm a terrific liar, I don't think he's really lying to us when he's assuming this is like some kind of therapy session, but you certainly don't know, is he exaggerating the truth or is he misinterpreting something or whatnot. With Antolini, I don't think Antolini, my gut says he didn't do anything wrong. I think one of the things that makes it difficult for us to even kind of imagine this whole scenario is in 2016, Luke is not going to show up at my door at 1 o'clock in the morning too often and go, hey, can I crash here? And Mrs. Kane, you know, with curlers and hair and whatnot, gets the pillow and here's, you know, make up a bed for him on the couch or anything like that. So we, number one, wouldn't even kind of imagine that whole situation. Antolini does mention about having lunch, you know, with his father. You know, there's history with it. You mentioned James Castle, the whole scene jumping out the window. Antolini has history with Holden, used to be his teacher, and Antolini's the one who picks up James Castle. So certainly, you would think has some kind of understanding of Holden's vulnerability to, you know, with a whole lot of issues. So I would say he certainly seems to understand and know who the guy is. But the fact of, number one, just a student going over to the teacher's house to hang out, that's not something that we're, you know, going to be processing as that's normal, that's typical. Stay away from my house. So, number two, no bad visited my house once. Yeah, weird. Strange. He looks uncomfortable. I kind of picture it, Holden's there, certainly, and we, hindsight being 2020, we know he's this close to really being in serious trouble, you know, from a mental standpoint. And I give Annalini the benefit of the doubt that he probably notices that as well. So I kind of picture Holden, you know, is finally falls asleep. Antolini's looking at him going, you know, poor kid, pats him on the head, and that's right when Holden wakes up and he freaks out about it. I gotta go. Places to go. Yep, people to see. I'll see you later. Okay, bye. And right, like the next chapter, you know, beginning, he goes, I might have made a bigger deal out of it than it really was. So that's already kind of creating some doubt. And not making light of it whatsoever. When he says, you know, that's happened to me before, we don't know anything that's happened so far as other adults with him. Is he exaggerating? Is he being serious? Don't know. would say that, and I believe it was one of the passages that you were doing when you did the multiple choice last week. I do think that he believes Jane was probably abused, possibly sexually by stepfather. And so that's certainly still a very real concern of his. Is he transferring what may have happened there to him? Who knows? Is that what he means by, this has happened before? Even though he kind of mentions himself, not sure. The problem with Holden, though, is you never really know what's going to be truth, what's not, what's exaggeration. I don't get the sense that Antolini got feeling, that he was doing anything improper or had intention. But I think Holden certainly feels very uncomfortable, and it's a pretty strong juxtaposition to how he, forget it, you mentioned comfortable with kids. To Lexi's point, where you feel more honest, more genuine, where now when he gets with adults, that comfort level completely disappears. And the fact that his parents aren't really involved, the only time you really see his parents is mom talking to Phoebe, don't smoke cigarettes, that's not good, it's bedtime. We don't really know how that relationship works. Probably the fact that he doesn't want to see his parents, though, is an indicator enough that relationship is not too good at this point. You flunk out of 5 or 6 schools, there's probably going to be some strain between you and your parents as well. So, no, we don't have a whole answer as to what did happen. I think there's probably genuine concern on his part, and I think Holden probably blew it up, which is what he does do from time to time.
With his hat, it seems kind of like a security blanket for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wears it all the time.
Especially if he's bad. I mean, when he goes on his dates with Sally or whatnot, he's not going to go, "Hey, look at my hat." But when he goes to the park, what you guys were just looking at within your quiz, the hat goes on. If he's feeling vulnerable, yes, I would say that hat shows up, and I think that does become a big deal with Phoebe as well. Hunting hat for him, I would completely agree, ends up being that security blanket. And even the origin of the hat, when does he buy it? Way back in the beginning.
When he's getting kicked out.
He's it's at that same time, but there's something else that happened right before where he decides, well, not to make up for this, but
He lost all the files on the train.
all the fencing equipment on the train, remember, leaves it on the subway, and the team gets mad. He's like, I'm not going to be hanging around them for a while. So then he ends up buying the hat, puts it on. He mentioned some weird things about it. I mean, he calls it his people shooting hat, which again, I wouldn't say that he's being sincere that he's going to become a sniper with it, but based around some of the issues with the book historically, that ends up being a phrase that causes some problems. But I would say, yeah, it does tend to come on when he is most vulnerable. Michelle, did you have something about the hat, or are you going another? Pardon? He let Phoebe wear it, and then what does Phoebe do with the hat? At the end, gives it back and puts it on. When you have that whole carousel scene at the very end. And for me, that ends up being a big sign, because when Phoebe puts the hat on Holden, I read it, interpret it all essentially as she, what? Holden, fill in the blank. Need a verb. Phoebe blank Holden. That comforts, yeah, I think would certainly be one that would work. I'm also thinking of an A term. Not only do you comfort a person, but you recognize who they are. You don't have a problem with that person, therefore you accept, him or her. I think at that point Phoebe does, not that she never did not really accept Holden, but recognizes who he is, which for her is going to be a pretty mature thing at the age of 10. 10th grade is, 10th grade. 10 is what, 5th grade, moving on into 6th. I don't know what Jack was like towards his sister when he was in 5th grade, but probably 5th grade, 6th grade when you start getting a little bit more judgmental. No, I don't want people to know that. Pardon?
They're all cranky.
Fifth graders?
Yeah, that's like
Boy, you're cranky in fifth grade.
5th, 6th, 7th, they're all miserable.
Miserable by 10th, 11th, 12th, jump off that cliff into adulthood. How can you not be a phony? But that's probably, I would say, 5th grade, 6th grade, when you really start to judge people. It'd be very easy for Phoebe to go, yeah, that's not my brother. Nope, I'm going to go play with those kids now. See you, strange person who I've never met before. But her putting the hat on does not do that. The other big thing with that scene, what's his concern when she's on the carousel?
Isn't like everyone reaching for some like golden ball or
Golden ring, and people read that and go, I have no idea what in the world is going on. But Shelby is here to explain this.
On the older carousels, they had this golden ring that would hang around, and if a kid got it, they would get some sort of prize.
Usually it was a free ride.
Yeah.
It's kind of like getting the ball on the 18 hole, at mini golf in the clown's nose, and you get your free game. You're there at Kanice trying to hit it into the free one, and you go through 12 balls before you can hit it. But yeah, you get a free one. Which horse or types of horses, especially at Kennywood and those big carousels, do the kids want to go on? The ones that go up and down. So you're going around in a circle and going up and down, and then you're reaching for this ring, which sometimes, some of them, they would not spin. They would be stationary, but they might go up and down also, depending upon the carousel. I am sure the one at Kennywood used to have one. Probably the one at Idlewild used to have one. Why you take them away? Fall. Up, down, ring going up, down, bad combination. He makes the comment, sometimes you just have to let them fall. Which could be, you're going to hurt yourself, you need to deal with it. But keep in mind, what does he want to do? He wants to catch them. And so for him to admit that sometimes a kid might fall basically means sometimes at some point you're probably going to reach adulthood. You can't really stop it. It is going to happen no matter what. I don't want to say at that moment then everything is going to come together for him and he's going to have a new understanding of the world, but it certainly does seem that there's hope that he kind of recognizes, I don't know if the inevitability is a positive way to put it, you're going to be an adult, Jack, like it or not, it's going to happen, but recognizes that you can't keep people young, innocent, youthful, Peter Pans, flying around all over the place. That transition is going to happen. So at the very least, maybe Holden recognizes adulthood doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad thing, that you are going to, in fact, be a phony no matter what. Probably don't have the time to answer this whole entire question completely at 10:28 or 10:29. Regardless of, people will like the book, and there are certainly people who are not going to like the book, perfectly fine. But if a person likes the book or dislikes it, someone goes, should I read it? Yeah, I think you should. Well, what's the point of it, or why? There's swear words in it, and that's fun. What's the point? What's the purpose? Why? Maybe that's when we'll start tomorrow. No, they're yours.
Can you write me a pasta water?
Mm-hmm.